Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Monday, June 10th, 2024. I am John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine, reminding you that our roast in November, on November 17th, the 14th annual Commentary Roast is of Natan Sharansky, the greatest living Jewish hero. How are we going to roast the greatest living Jewish hero? Go to commentary.org/roast to find out how you can attend along with me and executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Washington commentary columnist Matthew Continetti. Hi, Matt.
Hi, John.
And media commentary columnist Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
Israel rescued 4 hostages. In response to Israel rescuing 4 hostages, not only was there a full-blown near riot about 5 feet from the White House involving the desecration of statues, including that of the Marquis de Lafayette, who was once an obscure American figure, but has now become a legendary American figure owing solely to Lin-Manuel Miranda's elevation of him as the world's greatest rapper. In Hamilton, Daveed Diggs's incendiary performance as Lafayette in Hamilton, making him now a pop culture figure. Not the right statue. Maybe if you'd found a statue of Matt Anthony Wayne, nobody would have cared. Lafayette's a slightly different story. Lafayette Park looked like Kabul in 1989. I don't say that lightly. And while this was going on, while the Israelis were rescuing the hostages in an incredible, daring daylight raid of astonishing skill, Joe Biden was delivering a speech at Point du Hoc, the site of the Normandy landing 80 years ago, sounding like Mushmouth from the Cosby Kids. You couldn't understand a word that he said. Really setting himself up great to lower those expectations for the debate on June 27th.
Mushmouth would have given a better speech.
Fair enough. Mushmouth is a very intelligent person. It's just a little hard for him to understand. That's number one. Number two and number three, of course, was the response of what we can now only call the Hamas apology corner of the American media that goes from the far left, now getting pretty close to the American center. We're getting pretty close when the Vice President of the United States, in a speech at a state I would now like to refer to as Michiganistan, wanted to pour some out for the Gazans, all living, by the way, in proximity to where the hostages were, like they didn't know that the hostages.
Some of them were keeping the hostages in their own homes in order to get some money on the side. Yes.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but 250,000 women and children, most of them under the age of 2, were killed in the daring raid, which, by the way, took place in a UN refugee camp, which is supposedly therefore under the control of the United Nations and not Hamas. And one of the 2 buildings that was raided was a UN school. In case you were wondering whether UN schools are sites of Hamas activity, and therefore that the UNRWA is a Hamas subsidiary.
And one of the hostages was being held by an Al Jazeera employee.
An employee of an American
nonprofit,
501c3 nonprofit called Palestine Chronicle, an American nonprofit, like the Holy Land Foundation. Like, some people are going to jail. Some people are going to jail for material support for terrorism. I don't know who's on that 990 form. Enjoy prison, you guys. I don't think you're going to get treated very well by the population there, and I will love to hear the stories. That's that. Now, we can get to the geopolitics in a minute, but we have Hamas rallies in Washington. We have Hamas rallying on social media, and we have Israel saving 4 hostages, while the United States continues to remain mute about the 5 American hostages that are still being held in captivity.
Well, with Secretary of State Anthony Blinken leaving this morning, Monday, June 10th, for his 8th trip to the region since October 7th, in order to convince Hamas to take the ceasefire deal that's on the table.
Is he bringing his guitar? That's all I want to know. Will he get a chance to step out
That will
and
spark a
play
new
his
war.
guitar. Because that was really a great moment as Ukraine is suffering the greatest existential crisis in the life of the country. He did whip out his guitar and play some high school riffs, like, I don't know, Stairway, whatever.
Neil Young, "Rocking in the Free World" was what he performed there, John.
Yeah, well,
milestone performance.
I'm glad he didn't play Harvest Moon. So
I think this
like Harvest Moon, and I would hate to have it ruined.
Heart of Gold. There could have been a lot of other Neil Young songs he could play. The hostage deal, or rather the hostage rescue, I think blew apart a lot of myths about what's going on in this conflict. The key line here, as a friend put it the other day, was these hostages were rescued, not released. There have been no hostages released for months. The ones that we've recovered have been rescued. And it's completely ridiculous for the United States to stand there and push for some type of hostage release with a terrorist organization that clearly has no interest in a ceasefire that doesn't involve Israel's exit from Gaza, as the IDF performs this incredible operation to actually get 4 hostages out of Hamas captivity. Moreover, the whole idea that somehow Hamas can be easily separated from the Palestinians living in Gaza was also, I think, demolished by the hostage rescue for exactly the reasons that you lay out. They're in these homes for months. Moreover, the hostages are often, those on the surface, it seems, are moved from home to home and from city to city. So it's not like just, you have a neighborhood where everyone is complicit in this war crime. There are a lot of neighborhoods that are complicit in this war crime. And all these other UN/Arab affiliated institutions like UNRWA or like Al Jazeera are also complicit. So it was a daring operation, Operation Arnon, named after the IDF soldier who was killed in the rescue. It was an incredible success. It was so wonderful to wake up on a Shabbat morning to good news for once. Seems like it's been months since that's happened. And at the same time, it's just exposed the lie to so many American perceptions of what's happening in this conflict. And for the vice president to somehow make the story about the Palestinians who were killed. By the way, they're killed because it was a huge gunfight. The first rescue had the element of surprise. The element of surprise was missing from the second rescue, which is where the 3 male hostages were being held. And that's where this huge gunfight ensued. That's not the story. The gunfight isn't the story. The rescue is the story, and it's a betrayal of moral clarity for anyone to not focus on what's really important, which is the rescue of the captives.
Yeah, I mean, you say this exploded a lot of myths. I think it confirmed that they were myths for people who already knew this. For people who still believe in the myths, they've doubled down in response. It's not like this has opened their eyes. It's sort of done the opposite. They've now hunkered down, and they are ready to sort of overtly fight on behalf of Hamas and argue on behalf of Hamas and against anything that Israel does.
We should also add the U.S. is now also pushing this UN resolution for a ceasefire that advanced a little over the weekend. And supposedly there was some negotiation because Israel raised some objections. But if you read the text of this resolution, this is also another example of the Biden administration undermining Israel's ability to fight this war. It's a ridiculous resolution.
Okay, let's go to the geopolitics for a minute. Tony Blinken going for the 8th time to Israel after, by the way, the 7th rejection, by my count, over the last 2-3 weeks of the Israeli proposal for a ceasefire. Now, there are details that we don't really understand about the proposal, but apparently the proposal is a 6-week ceasefire in exchange for some hostage release. Should that go well, there might be additional ceasefire time to lead to other measures, including release of Palestinian prisoners and then some more hostages. Israel would be pulling back from Rafah. Okay, so this is a bad idea militarily. Israel freezing at the gates of Rafah caused a terrible political and moral and social crisis inside Israel that they froze in place. But the proposal is on the table, and Hamas has rejected it. Then it's rejected it again. It's rejected the third time. Then it rejected. Then a fourth, and then Egypt says it rejected. Qatar says it rejected it. Let's just talk about the narishkeit, the foolishness of what Anthony Blinken is doing. We do not negotiate with Hamas. It is against American law for us to negotiate with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. We do not negotiate with them, so we have to negotiate with intermediaries. So we have apparently two intermediaries, that is Egypt and Qatar, right? And Egypt and Qatar, seriatim, say Hamas says no. For Egypt says, we talk to our Hamas people, they say no. Qatar says, we talk to our Hamas people, they say no. We're told he's going to the region to try to convince Hamas to take the ceasefire deal. But he's not talking to Hamas. So why is he going there? He is going there, as I've said before, because he is serving as one of these characters in The Godfather, who are either called the Rosado brothers. I think they're called the Rosado brothers. And they go and they're hostages. They're professional hostages. If you're making a deal between the five families, and the families have to make sure that everything is going to go okay, you bring in the Rosado brothers and they sit there as hostages. And then if people double cross, the Rosado brothers will then go and kill the double crosser. They'll just slaughter everybody. And therefore they sit there as kind of like the NATO tripwire of the mafia. I don't know if Mario Puzo made this up or if this was a real thing. It doesn't matter. It's a fantastic concept. He's going there to keep Israel from launching a full-bore invasion of Rafah. Let's be serious. He and Jake Sullivan have been trading off, I guess, because maybe it's one of their kids' Sweet 16. Maybe there's some spouse is going in for maybe a touch-up, and so they can't just go every week. They have to trade off. And maybe Blinken's guitar's in the shop, whatever. So the only cynical reason I can see for them doing this again is to be there in the region so that it can't be like, I can't believe that you sent 100,000 people into Rafah while Anthony Blinken is here. How disrespectful. Does anybody remember the disrespect shown to Joe Biden during the Obama administration when he was in Israel and Israel built an apartment? And then Hillary Clinton made a speech about how Israel was evil because Israel built an apartment on the West Bank while Joe Biden was there visiting. This is where this has come down to. This is our closest ally in the Middle East, and we are actively working to subvert its goal, which we claim is our goal. America announced it has a tripartite plan to save the Middle East. One, ceasefire. Two, Hamas is no longer. Hamas is destroyed.
It changes its name
to
Sama.
Tony's guitar. Then three, there's a Saudi, Israel, America tripartite alliance that will counter Iran. This is the ultimate yada, yada, yada policy. How you get from 1 to 3 when 1 to 3 are all in contradiction with each other. If there's a ceasefire, Hamas survives. If Hamas survives, there will be no tripartite peace deal because neither Israel nor Saudi Arabia wants an Iranian vassal state to survive either in Gaza or on the West Bank. And if Hamas survives, it will take over the West Bank. Let us not be under any illusions here. Hamas is more popular than the Palestinian Authority, and its forces, if they survive, will take down the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, take it over, and then Israel will be surrounded on 3 sides, by an Iranian vassal state in Gaza, an Iranian vassal state in the West Bank, and an Iranian vassal state in Lebanon. And the Saudis don't want that. That's why the Saudis went into alliance implicitly with Israel a decade ago, because they looked around and they said, who's going to keep the Saudis from nuking us? We better find the only other people in the Middle East who are willing to stand up to Iran. And here we are. We are standing up to Iran. You think the Saudis want a Palestinian state Am I taking crazy pills? What is wrong with Jake Sullivan? You know what's wrong with Sullivan and Blinken? And then I'm going to stop ranting. Biden. This is all Biden. The fish rots from the head. He's 311 years old. He's senile and stupid. And all he keeps saying is, gotta get that Palestinian state. And then they're like, okay, boss, we're going. Here's my guitar. I'm going. Let's see what we can find out.
Well, before we talk about what happened outside Biden's house, the house where he's supposed to spend his time, the White House, there is one other person who I think looks pretty foolish after the events of the weekend, and that's Benny Gantz, who had to live up to his speech that he gave last month where he said he was going to quit the war cabinet if Netanyahu didn't lay out the whole post-war strategy, and there were several other conditions. Now Gantz, he had to make good on his promise. He's outside the war. He's out of the war cabinet. He's left the government, but he did it right after this most amazing development in the war, a time for, it seems to me, national solidarity to say, oh, this is actually how Israel can win in Gaza, is through military force and through use of intelligence, military intelligence. Military pressure is what released the hostages. It's what led to the only ceasefire last year, was military pressure, when Hamas really thought, oh God, our backs are against the wall. Here it was, Hamas is not a player anymore, diplomatically speaking, so you just go in and you get the hostages when you can. So even stranger, though, is that after pushing, in my view, Gantz to make this ultimatum of the government and to basically have Gantz leave the government, I now see reports that say that the United States is upset that he left the government because now they have no more leverage over the war cabinet. So yeah. I actually wonder whether Sullivan is going this week to try to reestablish some leverage, because now they don't have Gantz as a middleman anymore in the councils of state, so they have to go in person to try to pressure Bibi and Gallant and the rest of the war cabinet and coalition in order to get the ceasefire. But it just shows you how stupid they are, because if they thought...
It's hard not to look at and use the word stupid. I have a post about to go up. It'll be on the website by the time you read this. And I am blitheringly, look, Benny Gantz, like you say, said June 8th, unless Bibi has a plan to end the war, I'm leaving on June 8th. So the morning of June 8th, they rescue the hostages. Could have said, I'm going to wait 48 hours. Let the nation celebrate.
Right.
Let the nation mourn our fallen hero, who was the one killed while the rescue. There's a lot of drama going on in Israel. The father of one of the 4 hostages basically appeared to have had a heart attack and dropped dead upon hearing the news that his son had been rescued. The Nora Argamani's mother, who has brain cancer, she went to visit her, and it's not clear that the mother was there enough to know that she had been there. These are huge stories. They're stories in Israel. And Benny Gantz going, let me interrupt this moment to say, I'm leaving. Bibi's lousy. You know what we need to do? Here's my plan. First, I'm going to release the hostages. Then I'm going to get Hamas. Then I'm going to make a deal to stop Iran. How am I going to do that? I don't know. Gee, but I'm doing it because I said I was going to do this, and I'm a man of my word. That guy is not going to be elected prime minister. A person with that low emotional and intelligence to make that speech on that Saturday night, however lousy you think Bibi is, say goodbye to Benny Gantz.
First, I'm fascinated by you.
He's, by the way, not even the head of the opposition. I just want to remind people, Yair Lapid is the head of the opposition to Israel, has 24 seats. If Benny
did
Gantz
not join the cabinet. Did not join the cabinet. But I want to say it's very amusing to me that you turned Benny Gantz, who's this soldier, this huge man, very deep, stately voice. You turned him into Professor Honeydew from the Muppets in your impression, which I found very amusing.
Yes, and Jake Sullivan is Beaker. So
Yeah, but second,
it
it
actually
also
sounds like Beaker.
for the first time, I can begin to understand why Gantz has been unsuccessful over the years in toppling Netanyahu. Right? I mean, it's not like he's alternated office with Netanyahu or anything. He's this very celebrated figure in Israel, I think for valid reasons of biography. But this type of move is so tactically foolish. And we look at polls now where Likud and Netanyahu have recovered a lot of the ground they've lost since October 7th. You can begin to see why. Again, another myth that was exploded. You're right, Abe. I mean, it's all the myths are already exploded, right? But there is no post-war plan for Gaza. You can't. It's clear now. There is no, because until the Palestinians understand that Israel is there to stay, you cannot have another Palestinian state. It will just be Hamas by another name. That's what I mean. They'll just change the signage, right? So what Israel seems to me to be doing, and this was pointed out in a piece in Tablet a couple of weeks ago, is just laying the foundations for continued disengagement, right? But with a much more sustained and buttressed security presence. So that's why they're building these bisecting highways. That's why they're creating these buffers that extend deep into Gaza between the wall and between where they're going to allow population centers. This type of architecture that's being created that's the post-war plan, because it seems pretty reasonable for me anyway, after the events of the weekend, to think that there's no. I mean, what are you going to do? You can't create a Palestinian state if the interlocutor is there to kill you, and that has been the case now for decades, and it doesn't seem like it's going to change for decades.
Let me take a break and talk to you about our friends at Shopify. Creating really great retail experiences is tough, especially with multiple stores, teams of staff, fulfillment centers, separate workflows. It's a lot, but with Shopify point of sale, you can do it all without complexity. Shopify's point of sale system is a unified command center for your retail business. It brings together in-store and online operations, even across 1,000 locations. Imagine being able to guarantee that shopping is just always convenient, endless aisle, ship to customer, buy online, pick up in store, all made simpler. So customers can shop how and where they want, and staff have the tools they need to close the sale every time. And let's face it, acquiring new customers is expensive. With Shopify point of sale, you can keep existing customers coming back to your stores with consistent, tailored experiences and first-party data that give marketing teams a competitive edge. Want more? Check out at shopify.com/commentary and learn how to create the best retail experience without complexity. Shopify.com/commentary. And let me just ask you guys a question. How often do you wash your sheets? And are you team top sheet or no top sheet? Matt, team top sheet or no top sheet?
Yeah, that's a sheet above the sheet that you sleep under.
Yeah,
is that what a top sheet is?
Yeah, top sheet and then under the blanket if you have a blanket. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm on the top sheet there.
Okay, top sheet. Christine, top sheet or no?
No, I use a duvet, so I don't use a top
duvet.
sheet.
Abe?
Back and forth. Depends on how hot things are.
All right,
how
so
hot the season.
We are a top sheet family, and Boll & Branch has those top sheets for you. And if you don't want the top sheet, it has the fitted sheet, and you can buy duvets from them. You got all kinds of things you can get. Abe loves his Boll & Branch sheets. I'm not even going to make him tell you how great they are, because we all know how great he thinks they are. They feel incredible on night one. They get softer with every single wash, made with the finest 100% organic cotton, completely free from toxins, buttery soft yet super breathable, loved by millions of sleepers, over 11,000 five-star reviews, and that 30-night worry-free guarantee so you can wash, style, and sleep in their sheets for an entire month. You don't love them, you can send them right back. And remember, they have duvets, they have blankets, they have pillows, they have so much more. 14 versatile colors in all sizes from Tune Up to California King. Made without toxins, and that 30-night worry-free guarantee. So sleep better, with the softest, most breathable bedding from Boll and Branch. Get 15% off your order when you use promo code commentary at bollandbranch.com. That's BOLLANDBRANCH.com. Promo code commentary. Exclusions apply. See site for details. Let's talk about what happened in Lafayette Park and around Lafayette Park. And let's talk about social media. Israel stages this raid. And I swear to God, it's lucky that I follow many people with whom I disagree, because it was a very clarifying moment for me to read how people were responding to this raid. If there only followed people I agreed with, I'd have seen Am Yisrael Chai. What a great moment. This is, it's like in Entebbe. We needed this. I'm crying, watching footage of Noah going into the helicopter, watching footage of Andre, like falling to his knees and sobbing in his mother's lap. Like, these are moments, indelible moments that I will remember for the rest of my life. I will also remember Kenneth Roth, formerly of Human Rights Watch. I will remember Crystal Ball, host of the Crystal Ball. I had dirty pictures on Facebook 20 years ago and therefore didn't get elected to Senate, and now have a very left-wing show in which I spout Hamas propaganda. I have Mehdi Hassan, my beloved Mehdi Hassan, the Hamas shill, guttery cash register, talking about how evil it is, talking about the balance. Israel killed 5,000 Palestinians to rescue 4 people. How fair is that? First of all, I'm sure we're going to find out the death toll was like closer to 30 when all is said and done. These numbers are all coming from the Gaza Ministry of Health. Interestingly, AP did a report 4 days ago saying you can't trust the numbers of the Gaza Ministry of Health. AP's first report on Saturday out of Gaza quoted numbers from the AP, from the Gaza Ministry of Health. So that's really great, by the way. So they debunked it, and then they're using its stats over and over and over again. Hundreds and hundreds and thousands of accounts acting as though Israel had been the aggressor in rescuing Israeli hostages who had been in captivity in Gaza. So we now know the enemy. The enemy is basically now a Hamas front. That's all it is. It's a Hamas front. We can't say that there's humanitarian things involved here. You can cry crocodile tears about Palestinians dying in an Israeli raid to rescue hostages. Those are crocodile tears. You have not shed a tear about Syria. You have not shed a tear about what's going on in Afghanistan. Sudan.
A famine is happening in Sudan, and they have pictures of the people suffering from the famine in Sudan because of the civil war. And you know what? It's a famine. They're skeletal.
Nobody cares. So basically, and here in America, we had, as we have been building up to, Abe, from the encampments onward, and we had it a little bit at the beginning of right after October 7th, but the encampments started moving in this direction. We have here a full-bore Hamas rally in Washington, and for reasons that are going to come out, because the House is going to call witnesses and call Merrick Garland and call the head of the Department of the Interior and call the head of the Secret Service and ask, why was no one arrested? This is federal property.
Well, also, why did they not deploy more Park Police and Secret Service officers to begin with, knowing that this was planned, a rally for thousands of people? So they deliberately understaffed the law enforcement that was there. Yeah.
Well, listener Tom C, one of our friends, listeners, did ask on Twitter, said he expects that the Secret Service and the FBI and others will be using the same technology that they used on January 6th to identify the people who were in Lafayette Park committing these illegal acts. And if they don't, we're going to find out in January. And I thought this was an interesting way to put it, because this is a watershed moment. We literally now have, like in the 1960s, we now have the anti-American, anti-left is now affirmatively supporting terrorist totalitarians in our streets.
How did you all see it covered on the news, on cable news, because on social media, I saw all the images. They're carrying banners that say jihad. They're wearing Hamas gear. They're holding what's a Biden mask that's with blood dripping from, intended to look like his head cut off. They're throwing off smoke bombs. I put on CNN, and I saw this report about this symbolic banner, the People's Red Line, that's going to stretch, or it's supposed to stretch all the way around the White House, and the tremendous effort to take to go to such a length to bring this giant symbol in. Did you see any of the craziness covered?
No.
I didn't watch any television over the weekend, but I do read the papers on the weekend. I make a point to do that. Here's how the pogrom-like scene. I mean, if there had been Jews there, it would be pogrom-like. It was terrifying to watch what was happening. Here's how it was covered in the Washington Post. Statues near White House vandalized during Gaza ceasefire protest. Subhead: National Park Service workers power washed sculptures in Lafayette Square that were graffitied and vandalized during a Gaza ceasefire protest on Saturday. That's it.
Okay,
here's the New York Times. New York Times: protest against Gaza war draws thousands to the White House. The demonstration, the subhead reads, included ringing the White House grounds with a red banner showing the names of the more than 36,000 Palestinians killed during the war. So in this case, the New York Times, objectively worse coverage than the Washington Post, which is rare.
One of the things,
36,000 names that are actually 22,000 names. So
because of their own reporting.
Is it like one of those? Is it going to be like one of those lists when you find out when people sign up to petitions to support politicians and they write Mickey Mouse and they write, Donald Duck and stuff like that? I don't know what names those 36 names are.
We need to be very specific here because it wasn't covered in the mainstream media outlets, and a lot of people rely on them for their coverage. One of the articles of graffiti that these that our federal employees are scrubbing off today, it said on the statue, "Al Qassam, make us proud, kill another soldier now." There was a man with a banner that said "F Israel, stand with Hamas." I mean, these were there were red triangles.
Bleeding head of Biden.
Yes. And the red triangle, which is used by terrorists as to point out where they should attack next. All over White House, nearby the White House Treasury Department building, also vandalized. 0 arrests. 0
arrests and 0. It's like it's a non-event. And the most frustrating thing, John, to what you were saying earlier about the casualty figures, is we've gone through this now. This might be the third time we've gone through this, where it started with that attack with the Al-Shifa, the rocket in the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City. This is like the first month of the war. Everyone, the Hamas, the Ministry of Health, the Gaza Ministry of Health, and comes out and says, 2,000 people were killed, and 2/3 of them were women and children under the age of 12. And the reporters look at the number, and it turns out when you just scrutinize it at the minimal level, that it's complete fabrication. And so then you went through a few weeks where the newspapers would point out, the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is controlled by Hamas, says this. Or, Hamas says that these number of people were killed. Now you don't even do that anymore. And this is, again, the AP, this story right before the hostage rescue, basically explodes this idea of the massive civilian casualty figures, and within 24 hours, they're repeating the same propaganda.
And this could have been an opportunity. Look, Kamala Harris, whose speech over the weekend was interrupted by some protesters, and she did her "I'm speaking now." Everyone's like, "Oh, Kamala, you tell them." What she should have done is been much more forceful in telling them to be quiet, and then said, "And you know what? What you're arguing for, your side is currently outside the White House promoting a terrorist organization, and that will not stand. We do not support terrorism." She could have said this. Biden could have said this.
Yeah, she meant
the spokesperson, right? But the White House spokesperson,
does she mean it?
Said nothing. They said, "Well, people have a right to peacefully protest, but we do condemn endorsing Hamas." That's as far as they'll go.
Well, there are good people on both sides.
Precisely.
And let's face it, this is Charlottesville. This is exactly.
Yes. They're calling for genocide.
This is exactly Charlottesville. Only Charlottesville is 100 miles from DC. This is 50 yards from the White House. 50 yards from the White House. So,
This is much
and
worse than
Biden,
Charlottesville.
Exactly.
This is much worse than Charlottesville, because
Yeah.
this is in support of a terrorist enemy. I mean in addition,
Yeah,
to
they burned
being
American
bigoted
flags.
and
Yes.
in addition to being bigoted and violent and disgusting, and this is in support of enemies. And this is the 500th Charlottesville since this started. I mean, every one of these encampments, we've seen similar images. This is more shocking because it was right at the White House.
anyway, since Joe Biden decided to run for president because Charlottesville awakened him to the dangers posed by the people who would do such a thing as have a rally in favor of a Confederate statue, they are now trying to take down statues of the founding. And he told the Park Police under presidential control, the Secret Service under presidential control, and the FBI under presidential control to stand down. Somebody gave the order to stand down. And this is not going to stand. And this is very politically jeopardizing for him and for Democrats across the country, because if Republicans are smart, and they are smart, they are not stupid, even though a lot of them look really stupid, they are going to ask this question in hearings. There will be hearings to ask the question, why have 1,200 people been arrested using face recognition technology and all kinds of modern techniques to identify who they are at the Capitol building, hundreds of them sentenced to multi-year sentences for the insurrectionary behavior, which I support. And these people who are on federal property terrorizing others and destroying federal property are getting off scot-free as a deliberate result of administration policy. Good luck to you guys in the fall. And you know what? Good luck to you guys if Trump wins in November, because our friend Tom C. isn't going to drop it. And Ted Cruz, our friend Ted C., isn't going to drop it. You're not getting away with it that quickly. I don't understand what they're thinking. I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand if they really think that they need to remain in a coddling attitude toward these people. Abe, you called them enemies. There was a time when you could say, well, look, what they're really doing is they're objecting to Israel. They're opposing Israel. Israel is not America. They're doing this here, blah, 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 blah. This demonstration and others, as they have gone on in the last 6 weeks, have now explicitly connected America and Israel, and they are chanting Middle Eastern radical irredentist slogans. They are chanting death to America in Arabic on the streets of Washington. Is that what Biden wants to be associated with?
He wants to appease the people who are holding up a version of his bloody head. Yeah. I mean, and by the way, it's going to get worse, because it has gotten worse. And when you give them room, they know they can get away with it. It's going to get worse and worse. And it's going to get worse by the time the conventions roll around. We ain't seen nothing yet.
Well, and Abe, you made this point months ago when some of the early encampments started, that the tipping point for the average American who doesn't follow closely what's going on, particularly with Middle East politics and war, will understand when American flags are burned, when a seemingly foreign threat is embraced by a number of radical Americans and they turn on their own country. And that a lot of the slogans that were graffitied on the statues were anti-American, had nothing to do. It said America with the KKK, America spelled with 3 Ks, which is a popular way to for these folks to say this, American flags burned. The anti-Americanism is actually that's gonna sink in. People don't like to see our own flag burned in the run up to July 4th, for example, but that's what they're going to see. They're going to definitely see it at the convention. Democratic convention.
We're the big Satan. Israel's the little Satan, and it's
right. But it's been 40. It's, to be fair, right? It's been 40 some odd years, 44 years, 45 years since the cry of the Iranian Revolution was America is the great Satan. And when there was a direct assault on Americans by Iran in the taking of the 52 hostages, who were supposedly taken by students, just overeager. They were just overeager students taking us. But America was the great Satan. And Americans my age have not forgotten that. And fine, so I'm in my 60s, so I'm not, I'm not my kids who are in their, teens. And so they don't remember America being the great Satan. But congratulations, they're about to be reintroduced to the idea of America being the great Satan. There may be more, and people of that age are maybe more.
Yeah, well, I mean, the difference is that during the hostage crisis, there weren't bands of people in the United States calling America the great Satan. They were all in Iran. That's the bizarre reversal that's happened, that we've come and discussed on the podcast again and again since October 7th. Even 9/11, you had the anti-war movement, the far left Marxist anti-war movement that sprung up after the invasion of Afghanistan in October of 2001, but it was very minor. And since October 7th.
Right. Now, there was, and Andy McCarthy prosecuted them, there was material support for terrorism in the United States in the 1990s. The blind sheikh,
right,
who staged the initial attack on the World Trade Center, and Lynn Stewart, his lawyer, who was a radical leftist, like communist lawyer,
right,
who shifted remarkably over.
They were so marginal.
They were marginal.
Or like Anwar al-Awlaki, right? I mean, he was at GW, warning sign, right, before he fled for Yemen, and then Obama droned him. So I mean, these figures were here. They have been here for some time, but it's to see it as a mass movement since October 7th. Right. That is new. Right. That's what's so horrifying.
And just to carry on with impunity. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. They're just out there. There was a time when if someone, if you spotted a jihadist banner on someone's social media account, someone was going to swoop in there and talk to them.
See something, say something, right? Yeah. If you see something, say something.
Yeah, now you're out there. You're on the White House. You're in Lafayette Park with the huge banner calling for jihad,
Hamas,
and nothing happens.
The Houthis.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk two things then in relation to this. First of all, it is getting to the point of dumbfounding inexplicability, aside from the most obvious explanations, which we do not have to detail here, as to why Biden is not seizing on the opportunity to do a Sister Souljah moment in relation to the far left. We are seeing him getting material worse than Sister Souljah, who is one fourth-rate rapper who said, I want to kill white people and I don't like cops. And what did Clinton do? He went to Jesse Jackson's annual convention and he said, don't say things like this. And Jesse Jackson looked like someone had stolen his dog, and Clinton got the headlines that he needed to make him seem like a moderate. We're so far beyond that now with all of this. It's almost beyond belief. So either they are brain dead. I'm not going to say who, but they are brain dead, and so they cannot see this, or they are so scared of losing 2% of the youth vote because people will be angry they're doing this, that they're forbearing. I am. Then I look at the CBS poll. CBS poll came out yesterday or this morning. I can't remember. And here's the story. They're tied. They're tied. They've been tied now for 18 months. I'm serious. Since January 2023, this race has been a 1-point race nationally between Biden and Trump for 18 months. It is static. It is frozen. But dig in a little bit, and Biden is losing on every quality accept his view on abortion, on every quality that we associate with leadership in the United States. And not by a little, by a whole hell of a lot. List, I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but the list is really staggering.
I have it. So
okay,
I'll just want to go through it really briefly here.
Yeah.
So this is personal attributes. How would you describe them? The two candidates asking registered voters are tough. Biden 28%, Trump 66% say Trump is tough. Energetic. Biden 26% of registered voters say Biden's energetic. 61% say Trump is. Effective. 38% say Biden is effective. 52% say Trump is effective. Competent. 40% say Biden is competent. 49% say Trump is. The only one of these personal attributes where Biden polls better than Trump is compassionate, with 52% of registered voters saying Biden is compassionate and only 37%. But tough, energetic, effective, competent, big Trump leads. Vision for leading the country. 51% of registered voters say Biden has a vision for leading the country. 67% say Trump does. And it's kind of lopsided, the people who do believe that Trump has a vision as opposed to those who do not believe so. Whereas with Biden, it's a pretty close call. 51% say he does have a vision, but 49% say he doesn't. How do they handle themselves personally? Again, Biden does have an advantage here with a majority of registered voters saying, less than a majority. 49% say that they like the way Biden handles himself. Only 33% say they like the way that Trump handles himself. But, more people than not, or at least more registered voters than not, are saying that they dislike the way Biden handles himself. So the advantage on this issue is not that broad. But I think the most important point of this poll, just to sum up, is the question that asked registered voters, which candidate's policies would make you financially better off? If Biden wins, 16% of registered voters said they would be financially better off, whereas 42% of Trump voters, of registered voters, said that if Trump wins, they would be better off financially. That, I think, is very hard for an incumbent president.
Yeah, and the economy is the number one issue for most voters still across the board right now. That's what they're most concerned.
If you retrospectively think you did better under Trump, and prospectively believe you'll do better with Trump, what's the argument for Biden? I mean, the argument for Biden would be, well, you basically like the way he behaves himself more than Trump. That's that is the choice, really. That's what it's coming down to. But
the Biden administration, sorry to interrupt, but the Biden administration is giving those voters a message. They're saying, you're too stupid to understand I've done so much for you economically. It's really great out here. While this has been a theme and it's driven me nuts for months. He keeps telling his own voters and the voters he needs to win over, the independents, that things are great. And they just don't understand how great they are. They are not experiencing that. And we see the media kind of backing up that claim with all these stories about why is there this disconnect between how great the economy is and how people feel about the economy? So that there is a disconnect because they're not experiencing the economy that way.
Abe, in the last weeks of elections, particularly in close elections, the last week, usually, something happens. Like Romney and Obama were effectively tied in poll after poll in the last week. But it turned out that what was invisible to pollsters was the fact that Obama had succeeded in making the race a referendum on Romney, and that over the last weekend, Romney began to crumble a little bit, that the negatives and things like that he had been probing at, and that, he had been sort of like undermining the foundations of, it worked. And there was a slippage over the last weekend. Same thing happened with John Kerry and George W. Bush. where Mark Mellman, who was a Democratic pollster in the last piece he wrote for The Hill in 2004, said, there are these numbers, stuff inside these numbers. It's showing that people are moving away from Kerry on issues of character and personality. I don't like the look of this. And Bush won by 3, and so on. And so then the big one, of course, was Carter and Reagan, which we talked about last week, where basically just the earth crumbled under Carter after the last debate, which was, I think, 10 days before the election, or the only debate 10 days before the election. I look at these numbers and I see a real possibility that Biden's a house of cards, that there is that entropy will work here in the way that entropy actually means, which is that Biden is Biden because he is Biden and he is the Democratic candidate. He is generic. He is not Trump, all of that. But that the entropy effect is a degrading effect over time. And that as we approach elections, if Biden doesn't change up these impressions and opinions of him, that when it comes down to it in the last week and 7 or 8 or 9% of voters haven't quite figured out who it is, and they look between the two of them and they're just going to say, there's just so much about Biden that he's just failed me. And I don't like Trump much either, but I just, I can't vote for Biden now. I mean, he's weak on this, he's weak on that, he's weak on the other thing.
He's weak. It's not just his weak. And I agree that it's going to keep trending this way. It's not just that he's weak. The thing that makes people who really hate Trump, who are really opposed to him, you could say he's outrageous, it's the chaos, it's the threat to democracy, whatever it all is, they're scared of him. They find the prospect of another Trump presidency scary. What's happening with Biden is he's becoming scary. This is becoming scary. When you hear a president talk, the way he speaks, when you can't understand him, that's scary. When he's looking for chairs that aren't there, it's scary. When people are in Lafayette Park throwing smoke bombs and calling for jihad, it's scary. He's creating a scary country. And it's a lot scarier, and in fact, than what we saw under Trump. Just is. And you cannot avoid
COVID was scarier.
COVID was scary.
But increasingly people do not appear to be blaming Trump.
Right.
For COVID, it was the mood that he was creating, the inconstancy that he was creating with COVID, and that fades over time. So yes, most people in America, given their druthers, would probably not vote for Trump if they had another option. And you're saying Biden could be the scarier option. I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it. Another interesting thing to look at is work and how we work and what the purpose of work is. That's why I want you to go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever, and get yourself David Bahnsen's book, Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life. This is a special, interesting, original, unexpected argument that says that we're living in a time in which increasingly people talk about work as though it's a necessary evil that you do to just sort of like put food on the table so you can do the things that are more important. But that David is making the case that we have a God-given capacity to make the world a better place, to express God's will through our productivity, our ability to make things out of nothing or to make them better than they would have been made otherwise, and that this is part of the God-given dignity of every person. The fastest way to a failed society is to continue in this low regard for work. We need to defend it as a therapeutic, cathartic vehicle for dealing with challenging circumstances in life. So please, go to fulltimebook.com if you want to know a little more about what's being being explained here. Give you a little sample, give you a little taste of it. But David's book is something special. Full-Time Work and Meaning of Life by our friend David Bahnsen, Bahnsan. Get it wherever you get your books. I want to cite one more thing before Matt does the recommends, and that is a poll that I think suggests that this election may be epical in a way that we don't quite understand now. This has been a trend now for 20 years, but it explodes here in a new Pew Research poll. Brad Wilcox, who is the marriage guy, right? He's written his latest in a series of books on the virtues of marriage. Staggering 40-point percentage gap between Biden and Trump backers in percentage who say society should prioritize marriage and kids. 19% of Biden supporters prioritize marriage and kids. 59% of Trump supporters prioritize marriage and kids. Let's just pull back and think about this for a second, because, of course, in previous generations, this would have been the kiss of death. If 60% of the people who, if you have a candidate, 60% of whose voters prioritize marriage and kids, and they're supporting this candidate, that would be it. That would be it, because 80% of people were married and had kids or grandkids or whatever, right? We're living in a different society now, right? You have the never marrieds. You have now a percentage of Americans who are never married or are once married and permanently divorced or whatever. This is the separation of our time. The needs, the wants, the interests, the tax policies, the professional policies, everything that people support that make their lives go on a daily basis involve, do you have kids? Do you have grandkids? Or do you not? Because if you don't, you have a whole set of other issues and interests and things you want and reasons to object to certain types of policies. And if you have kids, there's all kinds of things you need. And the country is increasingly becoming a 50-50 country on these people, but it won't forever, for the simple fact of the matter that 20 years from now, the people who have kids, their kids are going to grow up and be people who were kids and are families from having had kids, and will therefore likely be the ones to have kids. And the ones who don't have kids are like the Shakers. Like, they're going to die out because they didn't have kids or they weren't married, or they'll have kids. The kids will have been in single family homes, living in worse circumstances, worse economic circumstances, and less stability and all of that, and will themselves continue to have a problematic view. So I wanted to point that out. Matt's got to go. So instead of having a conversation about that, you need to make a recommend, because you're
I'll briefly say it's all to your point. It's also about, do you want your society to perpetuate itself? Right.
That's nice.
It's not
that
just the
good.
Shakers. It's like, do you want to have a society that feels like it should live on, and that it should continue? And I would say that's a big difference between American society and Israeli society, right? Israel wants to live. It wants to continue. And it's sometimes hard to get that same message from American cultural elites, especially those on the left. So where I want to begin is just a quick shout out to the Friends of the IDF. They held a wonderful Mid-Atlantic region banquet in D.C. last night. I was privileged to attend. It was a very moving ceremony. And we also got to hear from the deputy mayor of Jerusalem, Fleur Hassan Nahum, who is quite a spokeswoman for Israel, and I think deserves more attention. Finally, my recommendation for today. Christine's supervisor and my colleague and friend Yuval Levin has his new book coming out, American Covenant, How the Constitution Unified Our Nation and Could Again, will be released tomorrow, June 11th, available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the other good bookstores. It has blurbs from Ben Shapiro, our friend, founder of the Daily Wire, as well as Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah. It's a fascinating look at the Constitution, not as a charter of liberty, but as a charter of unity, which is a slightly different reading than usual, and of course contains all the insight that anyone who's familiar with Yuval's work will expect and will be rewarded for reading. Also, great acknowledgments page. I'm mentioned in there with a lot of our friends, so check that out as well. So, American Covenant, How the Constitution Unified Our Nation Could Again by Yuval Levin is my recommendation.
Okay, and here's my disrecommends. Basic books in your publicity department. Shame on you. You are incompetent and bad. You never sent Yuval's book to this office to commentary. Yuval's a contributor to Commentary. He's a friend of mine. I didn't know the book was coming out. You stink. So you better get better. And Laura Heimer, listen to me. You better get that office better, because it is an embarrassment what happened here, that I found out that Yuval's book was coming out from reading Peter Berkowitz's piece on Real Clear Politics yesterday morning. Not good. Not good, Bob. Do better. So for Matt, Christine, and Abe, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.